I'm curious. I am curious. Curious.
By nature.
Welcome to Curious by Nature. I'm Jessica Johnson from Newswise. Colon cancer has long been considered a disease of older adults, but in recent years, doctors have noticed a troubling rise in younger patients. While genetics play a role, researchers are beginning to explore other potential contributors, including changes in diet, lifestyle, and even the microbiome. One area under increasing scrutiny is the widespread use of protein supplements, particularly among teens and young adults. With high protein diets, protein shakes, and bars promoted as part of a healthy lifestyle, could we be missing hidden risks to long term colon health? Our guest today is Dr. Stephen Lee Kong, a colorectal surgeon and professor of surgery at Hackensack University Medical Center. He's on the front lines of the shift in cancer trends and is investigating how environmental and dietary factors may be driving the rise in early onset colon cancer. Dr. Lee Kong, welcome. Please tell us about your work.
My name is Stephen Lee Kong. I'm a professor of surgery at Hackensack University Medical Center, and I'm a colorectal surgeon. I am curious about the links between certain environmental factors and the development of colon cancer, particularly in younger patients.
Please tell me more about your work and what you do.
So I am a colorectal surgeon, which means I operate on patients with colon, rectal, and anal related problems. Some examples include colon and rectal cancer, diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis, and other kind of anorectal problems that patients face.
Can you share with me more data about the increase in colon cancer in young adults and why this might be happening?
So there's been a clear demonstration of an increase in risk of colon cancer in young adults. There are really no clear underlying factors that are related to this phenomena. We believe that it's multifactorial and probably a combination of a lot of different factors. Some of them genetic, some of them environmental, and some of them related to the increasing rates of obesity in certain populations.
There was an article on Newswise relevant to the increased intake of protein by young adults, teenagers, and possibly the link to colon cancer. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. There has been a clear link with red meat, particularly well-cooked, kind of barbecued, well-done red meat and colon cancer, and that's been long established. There are some theories about protein supplements and leading to this increased risk of colon cancer, particularly in young adults. We know that young adults, teenagers, and older young adults have been consuming commercially available protein products, protein powders, protein shakes, protein bars, one as nutritional supplements, and two as kind of a quick meal kind of in between activities. I've seen this in my own kids. I have two teenage sons, and they both have been interested in protein supplements. There's really no clear link between these supplements and colon cancer or colorectal cancer, but there are some associations that do warrant some increased attention.
Today in the supermarket, everything basically, a lot of foods are packaged and now marketed with increased protein. And everywhere in media and social media, you see people talking about the need to increase the protein in our diets. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think in general, a balanced diet is good. Protein supplementation can be helpful, particularly in teenagers as they're growing. The recommended amount of protein per day for teenagers is around 50 grams a day. And there's been an explosion in the market now of, again, like you said, supplements, whether they're powdered supplements, liquid supplements, or protein bars and shakes and such. The important thing to recognize is that these items aren't really regulated by the FDA as supplements. And so you really have no idea what's in some of these things and what their effects are on your body. And not so much the protein themselves, but there are additives and things that may be in these products that may be detrimental to colon health.
Yeah. Is there data that maybe you can share around the increase of colon cancer in young adults?
At least in the U.S., nationwide, SEER data, there has been a shift in the age of onset of colon cancer. So from patients in their later 50s and 60s to 40s and even 30s. Most societies have now shifted their recommendation for starting screening colonoscopies from age 50 to 45 to help account for some of this increasing incidence in younger adults.
What's happening in our bodies when we consume high amounts of protein?
It also depends on where the protein is coming from. We think that animal proteins probably are worse in our bodies as opposed to plant-based proteins. So some of the animal proteins protein supplements that you'll see um, are made from whey, casein, collagen. Those are all animal proteins, which we think act differently than some of the plant-based proteins. Some of these protein products, when ingested in the GI tract, will turn into other compounds that may be cancer causing, like nitrates and nitrites. And that's our understanding of kind of the red meat proteins that may lead to the increasing incidence of colon cancers in adults that consume a lot of that. And so we think that the same processes are taking place. There's also a theory that the change in the microbiome may lead to toxins that form inside the GI tract. The microbiome is the natural bacterial load that are in our intestines, particularly in our colons, and alteration of that may lead to certain illnesses, including colon and rectal cancers.
So I had seen the article where you're discussing this that was the same morning someone I know had the night before had taken a large amount of maybe like 50 grams of protein with yogurt, and the next day for 2 days felt horrible and was very sick to his stomach. Is that a common or uncommon thing that you hear about?
Oh, I've personally experienced that, and I was trying to do this kind of hyper protein supplements right after a workout, and I was doing about 20 to 25 grams kind of per drink, and I had a particularly hard workout, and I think I doubled it for some reason, and then the next day I just felt awful. It's probably our bodies are not designed, and our intestinal tracts are not designed to handle that much of one type of nutrient at a time, and so I think um, in moderation, these things are probably safe, but big boluses of a certain, whether it's a carbohydrate or protein, is probably not good for us because our bodies, again, are not accustomed to that load.
It kind of reminds me of that phase of fat-free everything.
Right. And I think, we're all looking for the ideal diet. And I think, a well-balanced diet is probably the safest thing that I can recommend to my patients and not overloading on one thing versus another. One of my sons was a vegetarian. Is a vegetarian, but when he was first starting out, he was strictly kind of no meat and was a strictly, strict vegetarian. And we found that, he wasn't feeling so well after a couple of weeks. And, he was probably deficient in some vitamin that he wasn't getting in the diet that he was consuming. And so, he's now morphed into having certain proteins. So he'll do meat, he'll do fish, he'll do chicken. He won't do red meat, he won't do pork. Um, and he's kind of feeling overall better. So I think that balance was lost in his initial excitement about becoming a vegetarian. And I think that's what happens a lot of times when patients are kind of looking for that ideal diet, whether it's a Mediterranean diet or this diet or that diet. Um, I think you have to be very thoughtful and careful about the balance of different nutrients that you're taking in.
So, what would you suggest is kind of the right amount for someone to consume on a daily basis or per meal of protein?
I think again about 50 grams per day is what is usually recommended. And again, it also depends on your body type, your level of activity. Patients who are or people who are very very active, going to the gym, running, exercising, things like that, probably need more protein than those that are more sedentary. And so I think you have to look at your own level of activity. But again, I think about 50 grams a day is what is recommended. Again, I think throughout the day, like I wouldn't sit in the morning and have all 50 grams in the morning for breakfast and then have nothing during the rest of the day. You're probably not going to feel very good doing that. So I think, spreading things out during the course of the day, is probably the best thing to do.
Do people seem to be unaware of these potential harmful effects of high volumes of protein that they might be consuming?
Yeah, I think patients are in general unaware. I mean, I personally was unaware until I talked about one of the issues that I had. I think we get excited about you know being fit and being healthy, and that's great. But uh, in that, I think we have to be thoughtful about what we're putting into our bodies. And I was running to the store and picking up anything that I saw based on the recommendation of the person that worked in the store. I was deferring to their expertise about what was good, and not looking at these products myself more critically. And I think that's what we need to do. There are lots of fads on social media that, particularly kids can fall into, and they see this on TikTok or Instagram and they run out and buy whatever that is without really being thoughtful about what's in that product. And so I think more thought about looking at the label, more, talking to your pediatrician or talking to your doctor about, before embarking on protein supplementation, really having a discussion with your primary care provider.
And is there upcoming research or studies being done that you're looking at and that you're waiting to see kind of more information? What's the lay of the land kind of in research on this topic?
So I think for colorectal cancer, as it relates to colorectal cancer, there's a lot of interest in the intestinal microbiome, and how that plays a role in illness and wellness in adults and in kids. Again, there's a natural flora kind of within our bodies, within our colons, that help us stay healthy. We all think of bacteria as bad, but there are a lot of good bacteria that are part of us that help us maintain our body's homeostasis. And alterations in that can lead to illnesses, whether it's inflammatory bowel disease, cancers, other autoimmune diseases that are not fully characterized. And so I think for me, the most interesting kind of emerging research revolves around the intestinal microbiome.
And what do you recommend for the microbiome to increase and maintain a good balance in a microbiome for a person?
So I think for the patients that I see who are either coming in for surgery or coming in to talk about gastrointestinal issues, particularly patients who have had recent surgery, have had antibiotics, we know that certain antibiotics can really alter the natural microbiome of the colon, and so I recommend yogurts that have beneficial bacteria in them, so like for example, Activia type yogurts. Probiotics, I think, are also helpful to help augment the body's response and ability to recover after an insult like an antibiotic or recent surgery.
Is it enough to eat healthy in order to maintain a good microbiome if you don't have existing diseases that are affecting you?
Right. I think if you don't have a pre-existing condition that, for example, inflammatory bowel disease or have had recent surgery, I think just get a well-balanced diet. So fresh fruits and vegetables, a protein of some sort, carbohydrates, kind of all in moderation, I think is the best way to kind of keep your microbiome where it should be. Avoiding things like unnecessary antibiotics, and certain things you can't avoid, like having surgery for a problem, or if you happen to have an inflammatory bowel disease or some other condition, you may not be as in control of your microbiome as opposed to those that don't have those problems. But I think in general, just well balanced diet is probably the best way to go.
What type of foods would you avoid completely?
I think really well done red meat has been, again, clearly demonstrated to be increasing risk in colon cancers, and so I try and avoid consuming a lot of that. I actually like to barbecue myself. I like to grill, but I'm very thoughtful and careful about the amount of food that I consume that has been cooked in that way. And other kind of very processed foods, so things like cured meats, hot dogs, things like that, I think, that are high in nitrates. There is an association between foods of that sort and the development of colorectal cancer. So I think, do I enjoy those things once in a while? I do, but I try to be very thoughtful about the degree to which I consume those.
How do you know if something is too cooked?
That's a fantastic question. There really isn't a definition of well cooked. And if you ask me, anything more than medium is well cooked, but that's just my own personal opinion. We just know that there's an association between charred meat. So whether it's well done, charred on the outside, there are certain proteins that get converted to things like hydrocarbons and amines, that we know that have an increase in risk of colorectal cancers. And so, again, not to say you should avoid those things entirely. If you choose to, that's fine. But I think in moderation, and a little bit of everything is probably okay.
What about cured meats like prosciutto and things like that?
Same thing. I love a cured meat myself. I'm actually going to Italy next week, so I'm looking forward to having a lot of that. But again, these cured meats have a lot of nitrates and nitrites in them. That's how they're processed. That's how they're stored. And we know that there's a link between those chemicals or those molecules and colorectal cancers. And so, again, I think in moderation, with thoughtful consumption, I think that's fine. But if you're having prosciutto every day, it's probably not fine.
What have I not asked you that you think would be helpful for people to know?
I think it's really learning how to discuss these topics with your kids. And again, speaking from personal experience, going to the store and buying some of these products for my own kids, I'm a little bit more thoughtful and careful about as it pertains to protein products, where the protein's coming from, whether it's an animal-based protein or a plant-based protein. And having done my own kind of lay research, just as it pertains to my kids, asking them to look at the back of the label, the back of the package, and seeing what's in the stuff that they're consuming. Because again, a lot of these supplements aren't regulated, and unless you're careful, you could be putting things into your body that you're not quite aware of. And so I've actually asked them to switch to some of the plant-based protein products as opposed to the animal products.
From my personal experience, it's very challenging. You, as a doctor, are your children more open to hearing your advice?
Depends on what the device is about, but in general, I think a great relationship with my kids, and so I think, not that they will do everything I say, obviously, but they understand that I feel passionate about health and wellness, and so I think they'll listen to me a little bit more than they would listen to someone else. But clearly, my kids don't listen to me as much as I think anyone else's kids know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee Kong.
Curious by Nature is a production of Newswise. More than 7,000 journalists get the Newswise wires. Visit newswise.com and find out how to spread your news today.